Writer, director, documentary filmmaker, James Freedman.
Thank you.
And our moderator, Stan Taffel.
Well, you did it again to me. If you are a fan of this man, as I am, and you've seen his other amazing work, Glickman, Carl Laemmle, you understand that you're not just seeing any documentary that is just going to be a happy, fun, fuzzy thing, and everything is, Hollywood. Excellent job, sir. Excellent job.
Can I take you home with me? That's very, very sweet.
What impressed me, and we have so much to go over here, but what impressed me is that I was so intrigued that you got so many amazing top-level people who wanted to be interviewed about Charles Grodin. Not every documentary has Robert De Niro and Martin Short. I mean, there were heavyweight people here. How did that happen?
It really had to do with Charles Grodin. A lot of them were really good friends of his, and Alyssa Grodin, his wife, who Holly and I, my wife, have become very good friends with, she was able to help get me some of these people. And then some, like Martin Short, I cold called, and he loved Chuck, and he said he'd love to do it. And some of them were very difficult to get, and you just are persistent. There are a lot of people I didn't get, but I didn't need them because I got to keep people in his career and in his life.
There is not one wasted minute in this documentary. I mean, you sit down, you buckle up, and you take us on an amazing journey, and a journey that until I saw the trailer, I did not really know all of the advocacy that he did. It's the most amazing thing what he did for so many people to get them out of prison who were there for way too long, and in some cases shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Yes, it wasn't that publicized, but speaking of this, we have a very special guest here today. She came all the way from Idaho for this screening, Jan Warren.
Okay, and there I go with the okay again. Charles came, just like you saw in the movie, to prison, and I knew him from the movie, Beethoven. I'd just seen it on TV. I got to have a TV there. He was a godsend. What stranger comes into your life and changes it for the good? How many of us can say that we've done that in our life? All right? Very few, very few. Seeing this, you did an amazing job of doing him justice. Absolutely. And I remember 3 years ago, was it? The last time I was here. Had no idea what it would be like. And I also learned some things that I didn't know. That Charles started his advocacy before the drug issue in New York State. I heard from Randy Credico, another comedian and friend advocate, that he was going to help us change the law. That's what it was about, changing the law, not getting us out. That was the gift. So
It helped all those people after you that couldn't be imprisoned, because the judges had no leeway. They had to impose a sentence of 15 years minimum. Think about this, 1973. Could have been our kids, your kids, whatever it is, 2 ounces of marijuana. They later changed that, but 2 ounces of marijuana, 15 years to life. Draconian.
Something else about the laws that people didn't understand. They were written as an aggregate weight so that they could collect the drug kingpins, all right? Nelson Rockefeller had a great idea. A friend of his family's a child had died of an overdose. He wanted to do something. He was in a position of power to make a difference. So he was going to get all those big-time drug dealers in prison with this law that ended up tripling the prison population in this country. And in New York State, the drug charges increased it tenfold from what it was. That's what was outrageous. In 2 ounces of a controlled substance, you could have 3 grains. Think about taking the salt shaker in your palm, less than that, or this room filled. All right? With those 3 grains in it, you get the same sentence. 25 years to life.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we?
You did a great job. That was really amazing to see. And it's interesting because so many people today, with everything that's going on in the world, still say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how I can help, how I can make a difference. And I like to remind everyone, all it takes is one person. All it takes is one person with a heart and a rebel, okay, to society, to have his cause.
Yeah, he didn't understand that. Please give her another hand. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're going to lighten the mood now a little, because this actor, comedian, writer, director, producer, you have fleshed him out in a way no one ever knew. Even the people that may have known him may not have known every single thing. What did you find the most fascinating about Charles Grodin while putting this film together?
I think he was like a raw nerve in how much he cared about things, and I didn't realize, and Alyssa Grodin, his wife, confirmed this, I didn't know the background of his father dying, and I feel that was an impetus, because he was a workaholic. He would go to a dinner party, and when Alyssa was first married to him, he just would get up from the table in a restaurant after like 90 minutes and leave and go outside, and because he wanted to write, or it was enough. He'd be at someone's house and he'd leave, and they didn't know how to deal with this. And then they later learned that's just Chuck, Or he'd invite people over to his house for dinner and kick them out after 90 minutes. It's who he was. But I really think the death of his father, he wanted to prove that he was worthy. He just didn't want to work in his dad's store. He wanted to play ball. But his father thought that was who he was as a person, and he's a complete antithesis of that. And Jan, you said something, when you make a film like this, and I as a filmmaker know I'm going, and Carl Laemmle was a very similar thing, that the last act of your movie is kind of heavy material. You have to prepare the audience for that. And the way you do that is you have a theme and you thread through the movie. So you see he's sticking up for people in his high school when he's class president, way before civil rights was a big issue in this country. And then you see in Simon and Garfunkel, you see that he's trying to get stuff about Cesar Chavez and Vietnam and the assassinations and social justice, and threading it through, or Martin Brest talking in Midnight Run about seeing an element of that, to almost prepare the audience for what comes at the end. So it's not just, here's a bunch of laughs and now here's some serious stuff. And you see, he wanted to be a journalism major. And when he got waylaid into an acting career, it sort of took his time away from doing that. This guy spent the last 20 years of his life fighting injustice, basically full time.
After seeing much of your work, because I'm a friend, but I'm a fan, I knew almost what to expect in this. I've always thought of a James Freedman film as a garden that is being planted, and you put seeds all around and it all starts to grow, and before long it's the most beautiful garden. So I understood that, in school he was already helping people, and I'm thinking, here it comes, all right, I'm gonna hold on, but I was still not prepared for Jan's story and all of the other people. That just moved me and my friend to tears, actually, watching it, because it was told in such a real, honest way. You're a heck of a filmmaker, you really are. And you really are.
Very, very sweet of you. Thank you so much.
So, my next question, because I was 7 years old, my mother was what I thought the biggest Simon and Garfunkel fan. And I was watching that special on CBS.
Wow.
I have not seen it since. So this is the next thing. I asked you this about the Laemmle documentary. How is it that you can find all of this footage that no one else can find?
I'm a research nut. I don't have a researcher. I find my films researching them. I have to do it myself. It takes a lot longer, but I then can see that. And I was a Simon & Garfunkel fan, and I had an old CD of Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and it was all scratched up, and I went to buy a new one, and in that CD were those two movies that Paul Simon was nice enough to give me the rights to, which included the special, and then another special they did, not a special, but another documentary on the making of that movie.
Fantastic.
TV show, I should say.
And the other clip that fascinated me, because I was not old enough to enjoy it at the time, Lovers and Other Strangers. You had a kinescope with Richard Castellano and those amazing... Where'd that come from?
That was great. It was like 2 in the morning, and I worked late at night, and I was trying to. I usually the Tony Awards, they sometimes have filmed versions of the plays, but they didn't have this. There was no audio of it, and you're sitting there. How do I show it? How do I tell the people? So I just started Googling all the actors, no matter how small, in the play. I got the playbill of the original production, and I came across this guy who is in the clip, who's the son of Richard Castellano, and he's a comedian, and I open up this file, and it's the Ed Sullivan Show, and he's on the Ed Sullivan Show. But before he's on, Ed Sullivan is introducing what you see in the film, and I started screaming. I said, "Oh my God!" And I woke my wife up, and she says, "Everything all right?" I said, "Everything's fantastic. Look what I just found." And that's kind of what. It's like a scavenger hunt, and when you find these little morsels, it's the greatest feeling in the world, because it helps you tell your story.
Well, you told it so very well, and again, you know, some of us who have watched a lot of the A&E documentaries where they use public domain footage to tell their story, that's why when I know we're going to watch something with you, we're going to see stuff we never saw before. My personal favorite Grodin film is Midnight Run. And as soon as I saw the title with, you know, the black on white that said Midnight Run, I got all excited. And when he said it was his favorite film, I was just elated, because it's a movie that for an actor, to watch an actor where you can't catch him acting because it's so real. What is your favorite Charles Grodin film?
That's right there. I showed that to my 2 sons about 6 months ago, and they really loved it. My favorite is still A Heartbreak Kid, because that's the first thing I saw him in. I had seen Rosemary's Baby, but I didn't connect. That's Charles Grodin. It was a small role. And the only way to see The Heartbreak Kid is on YouTube. There's been a friend of mine has been trying to get the rights to this for many years, and they just have been unable to get it. But The Heartbreak Kid is so uncompromising. And they did a remake, which doesn't hold a candle to the original. And it's Elaine May at her finest, and it's Charles Grodin at her finest. And it's such a... If someone says, I'm going to make a comedy about a guy who ditches his wife on their honeymoon, it's inconceivable. And he plays it, as Martin Short said, it's so truthful how he plays that role. And he said, Grodin said, anyone who likes this film too much, there must be something wrong with you. Look at the character I'm playing, he's terrible.
I found Catch-22 a little disturbing when I was a kid, and I saw that scene because it jarred me. But looking at it now from a fresh perspective, I have to go back and watch it again. As a matter of fact, I bet a lot of you want to now watch more of Charles Grodin's work, right? And I don't just mean The Tonight Show, which for me was the most brilliant thing that I had ever seen. Andy Kaufman to me was the always anti-comic, but it's brought up in here that he was the anti-guest. Yeah. And I always thought it was put upon that it was always for fun, but I did not know that Johnny Carson banned him.
Yeah, he didn't ban him from the show. He banned him from when Carson was hosting for about, 5 years, 3 years. And what happened was Grodin would go on with guest hosts, and Carson would see them scoring, and the ratings go up a little bit. And then he finally said, "Oh, I think I'm going to have this guy back," which reminds me of a story. People say, what did you have to leave out that you couldn't put in? And I could have made another movie just with the talk show interviews. But Ellen Burstyn told me this story. Charles Grodin was not chosen to play the movie lead in Same Time Next Year. Ellen Burstyn was in it, and then they chose Grodin's friend Alan Alda. So Grodin is on The Tonight Show with David Steinberg, and in the pre-interview he tells them, had David asked me about, not getting chosen for same time next year, So they're doing a show, and David Steinberg innocently asked Chuck, tell us about, not being chosen for same time next year. And Chuck played it completely straight as if he was hearing this for the very first time. And he's going, what do you mean I wasn't chosen for this movie? I was great in the theater. Did you see me in the play? How could they not? Who'd they choose? He goes, Alan Alda. He goes, well, he's a friend of mine, but he couldn't hold a candle to what I could do. And poor David Steinberg is absolutely terrified that he stepped in. And Ellen Burstyn told me she was home watching this laughing so hard. And he had set it up again.
I especially like that you included the clip of Ellen Burstyn paying tribute to him at the Tony Awards. It really shows what a mensch he really was.
She is a class woman. I just had a wonderful time interviewing her. She really is a lovely woman.
Can I just say, for those of you who get it, Ellen Burstyn, wasn't she just unbelievably beautiful in this footage? Who was your lighting designer? It was amazing.
These people are not making any money, and they're helping me out. They're doing an interview for free, and I feel it's my obligation to make them look great and sound great, and edit what they're saying in a way that really emphasizes the best part of them. I think that's what I need to do for them.